And is this, do you think, for the pumpkin in the right place, or should it be kind of more over here?
It's fine.
Yeah.
If anything, I would just make sure that you're not kind of in the way of it.
That's what I'm worried about. That's why I was wondering if it,
Yeah, if you would, I mean, even
because I might kind of lean in and stuff like this too, and
yeah, can you shift yourself to the side a little bit more?
over this way.
Towards your, yeah. I'm sure that's fine. I'll flip over to the
Of course, that's not stable though.
Just a sec. Yeah, that should work. I think it's good.
Okay.
They should be able to see that.
Let me bring the mic a little closer.
Oh, yeah, that's really, just pick up. Another cool thing you can do with that mic is if you want to like, it's hard to like think of an example, but it's a terminology for it. There's compression on it though, so if you talk up like really close to it, it won't get super loud, but it'll give you that like that real like close podcast sort of sound.
Oh, okay.
Like you're, I don't know, if you're like addressing somebody or there's like a funny comment or something like that, talk like really close to it. Yeah, and it sounds cool on the
Okay.
the other end. Yeah. Especially like radio hosts do it and stuff. Like they'll talk in right close to the mic, and it gives it a totally different sound.
Mm-hmm. Where did my reference go? Yeah, that's.
Yeah, if you see the comments come up, or it's just.
Anyone here, bud? Wow, almost done. Realizes. Well, happy Thursday, everyone. It's October 28th, 29th. It's a good day. Thanks. So, what I'm going to work on a few things tonight. You can see I have a pumpkin here, and so I'm going to put a face on my pumpkin. I don't know, like you, if you're really busy, I don't have time to carve a pumpkin. I don't have an interest in that at all. But I am fortunate enough to have some tools that'll help me get a face on this guy pretty quick that still is a lot of fun, and put some expression on there. So we've all heard of Sharpie markers, but Sharpie actually started doing paint-filled markers. So you can get them water-based acrylic or actually oil-based too. The water-based ones will obviously dry a bit quicker. So yeah, I'm just gonna start putting a face on this guy just to get him ready for Halloween night. So I'm gonna start with the mouth here. Just gonna do some outlines first to get the shape that I'm kind of looking for, and then fill it in a bit after. So I kind of want him to have a bit of a smirk. Like, I don't know why I'm saying him, it could be a her. So what's really nice about these is they'll dry fast, but it's going on really great. So I don't have to do many coats, which is really great for time as well. And with these markers, I'm calling them markers, but I guess they're paint-filled markers, you really can get some fine detail in here. If I was using a brush or a palette knife, for example, I wouldn't get these fine lines the way they are. I'm just gonna put some stitches on this guy's mouth. Oh, I'm saying, oh, he's a guy then, I keep saying it. I'll go with it. I guess I'm wanting to say he's like Peter Pumpkinhead. I might turn him a little bit. I guess I'm seeing more of it than you are. There you go. Just gonna try to even out the lines a bit. The texture of the skin's you gotta kind of work with it. Cool. So from there, might even give him a stitch nose. I'm kind of liking the idea of some pretty big, round, funky eyes. His mouth's a little, like, not scary, but a little more seasonal, but I think I'd like a little more expression in the eyes. I'm gonna do one bigger than the other, just for a bit of whimsy. Put his eyes off kilter a little bit. Maybe I said too much candy tonight. So instead of digging around, making a big mess, that took all of a hot minute to get Peter's face ready for the Halloween, and he's good to go. So if you're stuck for time and an idea, you can run to your art store and get these paint markers and do something like this up pretty quick. All right, I'm gonna put Peter away. So the next thing I want to work on is another one of these characters I've been kind of having in my mind for quite some time. I'm just going to move this back a little bit. Thank you. So I'm always pretty interested in fashion. I think it's pretty cool. It's a great way to express kind of design, art, and people's personal selves. Never took fashion design or anything like that, but there's a lot of it around the world, and kind of I'm pretty observant, so I try to pay attention to things that catch my eye or are interesting, or kind of pull from nature a lot of the times too. So this is very much a work in progress of this particular character, but I kind of wanted to work on her gown a bit. So initially this is acrylic on board. The board is stained as well, so I'm using that as the midtones for her skin color. And I'm using, at this point, purples and pinks for her shadows and highlights at this stage. That'll evolve over time. And the dress is based in green, but I'm gonna add more layers and color tones to that as well. So I'm just gonna set up my palette here, and then we'll get going. So I'm going to pull in some more greens for sure. Whites for highlights. Blacks for mixing. Gonna add in some blues just to kind of play with the tones of the green as well. Kind of seeing this more as a aquatic themed kind of color scheme for this outfit. So sometimes people will water down their paint. When I'm working, I don't know, I just really like having everything really chunky and thick. It just, it gives more interest to me personally. So in the past I'd use like a smaller, kind of a flat brush for this to get these first layers down, something probably like this brush here initially. But now I'm going to play with this one. It's got a bit of an angle on it, and I can get a bit more play with some of it because I'm doing some finer details. So I'm going to mix the blues and kind of play with these highlights a bit. So I'm going to go dark initially. That way it just kind of gives me that shadow that I want to play off the light that's going to capture some of this. And again, trying to think of where my light source is coming from. So right now I kind of have the light hitting the side of her face and kind of front on, so it's kind of hitting here. So that light will carry down through out here. So for example, the shadow there will be because based on this pose, there'll be a gap between where the legs are that'll actually cause the shadow and a pucker in the material. Again, here you're going to have the arm and hand are going to cause a bit of a shadow against the light below it, even though the light is hitting there. So just try to work pretty quick to get all these in wherever I think there's going to be a bit of a darkness. You know, the belly might have a bit of a space here. This leg's going to be in the foreground more, so we're going to cause a bit of a shadow to show that bit of difference there. And I haven't quite determined. I kind of feel this character's floats around. Maybe there's some special abilities there that allows her to do that. So from there, I'm going to work in some of the lighter blue as well. It's going to give a bit of a highlight and depth there too. So I'm not too concerned about coverage. I kind of just want to make sure that these highlights are hitting a consistent area. So I'm going to keep playing kind of in that zone a bit, and you'll see how the light will fall. So I'm mixing the dark blue with the light blue and the green that I had started with, just to kind of get those variances as well. So for this one, I'm not gonna, as you can see, there's still some of the wood panel coming through. That's kind of to give me something to reflect upon, to know where the highlights are gonna go early on. Anchor points essentially is kind of how I like to look at them. So now I'm gonna add a bit of white to that, just so I can just brighten those up even a bit more. I'm not going to go over where I'd already put that earlier blue, because I want them to play off one another. They can mix, but it'll give more interest to the eye if there's a lot more variance in color between those areas as well. I wouldn't necessarily keep building on the same spots with the colors. So if something's not feeling right, for this instance, I find this blue is a bit much where I have it, so I can go back in with the green and darken it up a bit. So that hand, I want to draw a little bit more of attention to that, just because it is a different part and I don't want it to blend with the rest of the dress. So now I want to play with a bit of a lighter green, just to kind of play that off a bit, but I'm going to blend it more. I don't want it to be too much on its own. I think it'll stand out a bit too much. But again, I don't want to fight with those blues, but give it some of its own real estate. Nice thing is it also gives a pop of color where the green is, so it'll play off that earlier layers I've put on. So I can go with a lighter green down here, because maybe this dress evolves. It's not the same color all the way down. There's no have to be with this, which is great. I always think of growing up and watching the Oscars, you know, see these wild dresses that sometimes you wonder how they even stay on. I think J-Lo's won that year. It's a similar color scheme, actually. So yeah, I'm just gonna hit more of the green and the white in there just to really get some of these popping. Almost like chunks of sequins or something. Again, I want to go back and make sure that that hand stands out a bit. And also, too, with the light hitting this way, I want this iron to get some attention as well. Just gonna make sure, feel the light's gonna hit a certain way and a certain color. Just keep in mind too how that material might look and affect and how it hugs the body. So even the shadows, I will go into those highlights and use the lighter blue there. It's not going to be as bright as the other shadows, just because it's still in shadow, but the light will hit it and reflect a bit as well. Yeah, so that's how I tend to work with layering and coloring. Kind of do it in stages, play upon that, kind of see what textures are coming through, and then use those as part of the artwork to kind of get that final vibe too. So yeah, I like how this dress is actually really coming together. So this here's a pretty big piece. I'm actually gonna shift the easel down a bit so it fits the screen better. I might move the camera as well. It's feeling pretty good there. Feeling okay? Yeah. Cool. So, prior to COVID, I used to travel a lot. And one thing I always kind of like to do after I get back is take those feelings I got, look at pictures, and kind of imagine from an abstract or an emotional sense how I would put that on a canvas. So a few years back, this one's been a work in progress for a while. I guess other projects have come up and taken precedent, but this one is inspired by time spent in Iceland. So kind of like the black beaches and the skies and the ocean, and it's a very magical place. I think if you've been, you'd know that, and if you haven't, I would definitely suggest going to check it out. It's quite lovely, and the people there are awesome. So I just have some reference as well, just for color schemes of what was there from photos taken, and just kind of really want to work in some of those feelings. And one spot that really kind of stuck out to me, and a lot of people do check it out, is the black beaches with the really amazing stones and the 3 pillars that are out there and stuff. So yeah, I'm just gonna work away at this abstract piece, and for this one I'm gonna tend to use the palette knives for this. So I'm just gonna get my palette set up. Luckily for this one, I can use a lot of the same colors, but I'll be using more of the blues and some actually warmer tones as well. As I mentioned before too, when I'm palette knifing it, use a lot more paint. So it's good to load up for sure. So again, I'm going to use my favorite palette knife because it just feels good. So I want to play with the pillars a bit and kind of incorporate those. They're pretty phenomenal. These stones that similar to the Giant's Causeway in Ireland. If you've seen those, are the really kind of interesting columns of stone from lava and whatnot. So it's pretty phenomenal and cool. So I'm not going super literal with these. Again, as I mentioned, it's kind of more about the feeling and kind of like the memory and what was taking place, and just really experimenting and exploring that whole area was pretty phenomenal. It's quite amazing now, I guess, to travel for terrain and kind of scenic, as opposed to just going to another city. I kind of really want to explore different locations in the planet once we're able to travel again. I'm not going to stick with this color strictly in one area, but I'm not going to put it everywhere either, but I think it's going to play nicely everywhere. As you can see, the previous paint that's on there that's dried actually really gives me a lot of fun stuff to play with in terms of texture and placement. So adding in the white just kind of gives me the ability to put in some highlights and gives that idea of like the pillars being there. And it's a fast technique to get some interest. What I like too about palette knifing this way is that you can blend right on the canvas. It's a lot faster, fluid, but also super organic and really freeing. It's fine to kind of follow wherever it kind of takes me. It's really fun because I can go back there with another color after and hammer that in and kind of play around. So one thing about where this was, there's the black speeches, but it also pulled in a lot of the other surrounding stone colors and things too. So there's no rhyme or reason or wrong way to go about it to kind of work this in. So on the trip was pretty fun. A group of us went and we all had kind of really different things we wanted to check out and explore, and it was really great to kind of see so many waterfalls and the just the stone formations and things like that was just so crazy. And you travel around, you kind of see, oh, they put a house there, I wonder why there, and it's like, well, maybe that was the best waterfalls. It almost seemed like every house had a waterfall in its backyard. It was pretty phenomenal. So I'm really kind of pull this other colors right down in and blend this area. I'm really liking the dark side being over here for some reason. It's kind of feeling really good. I'm gonna mix in a bit of purple here. It'll play well with the blues and the whites. The more you kind of play with palette knives too, you'll kind of realize you make certain marks over and over. People ask, like, when you paint like this, can you do it the same way twice? Not exactly, but I can make it look, you can tell I did it just based on years and years of practice, but there's just certain motions I make that will leave patterns. I guess with my own signature, it's kind of like a cool way to figure all that out. So I'd suggest if you don't play with palette knives much, it's well worth messing around with. Yeah, I really like, for me, the fun part is just playing with the blending on the cameras. And having the knives like this, you can kind of put in some really strong details. I would say a lot of the feelings I had on this trip were actually a lot about whimsy and wonder and just like wow factor. You just kind of keep driving, or you're exploring or hiking, and it's like you don't really know what you're gonna encounter. And the great thing is about traveling that way, and other people are traveling too. You can connect and talk to them and see what they've explored, and see what's actually worthwhile going to check out, or they've discovered something that maybe you didn't know about, and you can kind of go have that experience with them or meet them along the way, and they may ask you to join along. And yeah, it's kind of really cool to figure out, well, you never know who you're going to meet and where you're going to end up. So I think that's one of the joys of traveling for me. So I'm just gonna add a bit of white to a few places just to add some highlights. Nothing too extreme, but just add in a bit of interest. Always a good idea to keep your palette from gunking up too much. It can add a bit of different textures for sure, but it can also make things really messy and also really just kind of clunk up things. So one thing to keep in mind is this is my favorite tool for sure, my favorite palette knife, but I don't want all the strokes to feel the same size, so sometimes I kind of have to play around and widen things out so it doesn't look like you're always using the same sized tool for this as well. So another technique I also learned working this way, and you may be able to see within the artwork in the back up here, is a bit of the brush strokes. So sometimes I'll use a bigger brush like this and just kind of use that as kind of a dry brush effect, kind of spread things out a bit. It softens some of the edge, but allows you to kind of play around with that, so you kind of get some really cool extra effects that you can kind of play with there. Just keep in mind you're gonna blend the paint too, so don't be going after dark spots right away, because you may take away the colors that are in the lighter areas. So in that sense, I would suggest working light to dark. The thing is as well, your brush will collect some of the paint, so you can go into other areas and just subtly work that in as well. So see there, I picked up some white, then I was able to put in a few more extra white areas there as well that otherwise I would never be able to get. And just for those pillars, I want to give that vibe that they're going up and down. But here, for example, for me, this is a bit of the beach, so that's kind of playing in that way, as if the tide was coming in and out against the sand and playing there, so. Cool. So that's how I like to work with abstract, is really kind of the feeling. Actually, I'm not loving one thing. I just want to tidy something up. So this one's a bit bigger, but I can cover a lot more ground with it. But I knew I wanted to bring that in. I can really drag the paint with this one. I'm just using the shape of the tool as well, just when you're playing around with it, just really have fun with it. It's going to give you different marks depending on what you're going to use, so the better you know it, the more you can do with it. Just wanted to get more variance in the colors in this section. I found it was really predominantly a bit too yellow ochre for me. Excuse me. Cool. All right, feeling pretty good about the progress on that one. One thing I do paint a lot of is chubby birds. I think they're just super fun, and I don't know, I just think they're cool. So I'm going to be doing a bearded reading. I can show you the reference photo there. He's already like a fat bird to start with, so I'll just go in and really exaggerate that a bit. I'm just going to set up my palette again to do that. Using a fair bit of white with this one, just to kind of blend the color. And this guy's got a lot of blues and warm oranges and skin, or not skin tones, but earth tones in it as well. Pretty cool yellow beak. So what are we doing for, let me bring this a little closer so you can see what I'm working on. Let's, yeah. Cool, and I can move this. Alright, that way we should be able to see what I'm doing here a little easier. So again, just to kind of do my markings and placement, I'm going to use my palette knife again. And again, we're kind of dark to light in this instance, so I'm going to put his tail in, kind of get the shape of his body. But as I mentioned, I want to exaggerate it. I don't want to do exactly what's there. I want him to make him pretty extra fat, because that's the whole fun of it. For me, anyway. I had someone tell me once that I had body positive birds, which I thought was pretty awesome. So I'm just starting with like an ochre, just to kind of get that background in there of just kind of the shape. I'm gonna give him an extra big tail. So that's going to be the shape of the body, but I want to put in a bit of a landmark for where the branch he's sitting on is going to go. I'll just use a brush to mark that in pretty quick and dirty. It's not going to be the final be-all and end-all, but it's going to be a visual guide for me as I build that out eventually. So from there I'll start adding in some of the other areas where these dark spots are going to go. So there's kind of a dark spot here, a little bit more on the tail as well. The cool thing is about this guy's eyes are such a crazy shape. It's almost like he's wearing like a mask, or he's like a Batman character or something. So I'm just using these as like reference points at this stage. Cool. So the way I go through a lot of that way I'm just not bleeding the paint across one another. So from there I kind of want to put in his back. And I'm going to use the colors that are in behind as well. So I don't want to lose that dark brown that's there. I'm not intentionally trying to get rid of that or cover it up. I want that to poke through and bleed through. And for when I paint, I kind of like to use the edge of the knife to block in the shape, just for when I'm working in this style. I'm not shy about globbing it on either. It gives it a lot more interest. In this area, he's a bit more in the shade, so I'm good to have some of that brown really kind of flow through here. So the fun thing is he's got these crazy blue highlights. It's really wild. I'm going pretty strong with those initially. So a bit of the coming out in the tail, down the the shadows down underneath as well. Also here in the underbelly a bit. Also, I want to, he's got these amazing blue claws too. They're kind of super interesting and really different. So I don't want to lose where that is and where they'll go. So I'll keep marking those in for my own reference. So next I want to put in a bit of the gray that's going to be there, especially in his underbelly. Not too much, it's mostly a lighter gray I want to use. And I want to pull in everything that's already there as well. It's not a completely different, but I'm gonna change up the angle of things too here a bit. So you can see some of the other colors are coming through, but it's really starting to get a lot thicker, which to me adds a lot more interest to the actual art and the painting. You can start bleeding things over a bit too. So I want to use a really, really light blue for what I'm going to be working on here next. That's just this, I guess, the hood of the bird. So now I just want to add a bit more highlights to his back, and then I can go in with the white and really kind of play on that a bit. really kind of bizarre. Super bright yellow beak. So now I'm just going to add a bit of detail to the eyes. I'm just using the edge of the knife for that as well. I just want to cut in a bit of the beak a bit with the shadow. Just gonna push that paint around as well, and so it kind of makes sense to where I have it. Then from there, I'm gonna let that kind of dry a little bit, and I'll work on the background now. So I think based on this color scheme I've got going on, for some reason I want like a pink or a red background. Kind of want it to pop a lot. But I want the background to feel really different, so I'm going to actually brush on the background in this instance. It's going to help give me a bit of an edge outline of this as well. Always make sure you're painting secure. You don't want it falling on the floor. That's never good. It has happened. Envisioning this part being time-lapse, I don't know that there's much to say. It takes a bit of time, but I'm not focused too much on the background being part of this particular painting. It's more about the pop of color against the colors of the bird. All right, so I'm gonna work in what's left of that tree that he's standing on. Good thing about palette knives with this, it actually kind of works really well with trees, because you can kind of play with how bark would actually work, and also like moss and things like that too. Just gonna add in a bit of white there to kind of pull that out. So I do want to add in just a bit of green in there, just to give that impression of moss here and there. Also pops really nicely against the red background, just where they're complementary colors. So from there, I tend to like wanting to outline everything. So this is kind of a darker character. Also plays nicely with the white outlines for this guy. And this isn't for any reason other than it's just a style and how I like to do it. Someone else may not add in these lines and kind of make it more, I guess, blended between the background and the foreground, but I kind of, maybe it's my background in animation and character and design and whatnot, but I kind of like giving the focus to the creature that we should be focusing on in this particular piece. So yeah, again with palette knives, I just like, it can be free, fun. You can kind of give him a bit more shape. Feels a bit more alive this way for me. I'm just gonna give a bit more highlights here and there. And then this guy's pretty well done. Hey, Viv. So this isn't a final piece yet. I have a few more steps I work on with this, but this would be generally my technique for when I do a palette knife painting of a bird or a character. I'd add some more fine detail later, but yeah, that's my process. So yeah, we kind of covered a lot tonight. So thanks for hanging out. What do we do? We got Peter the Pumpkinhead ready to go. That was fast and pretty easy for the most part. Worked on some fashion painting for the dress design. Did some more abstract layering to the Iceland inspired piece. It's quite large. And then my technique for palette knifing for birds. So thanks for hanging out, and hope you're having a great Thursday.